what is the reason why so many people see their romantic relationships fail, or they wish that it failed? Why is it so stressful and so disappointing at times? Now, I don't know all of my listeners, but just going by probability, it's very likely that in the past you've had romantic relationships that were dysfunctional or dissatisfying. Maybe you even have them in the present. Or that you have friends who find themselves in this situation. So you might wonder, what's the reason and what is the solution? Well, if you're a Valiant Growth listener, you're probably familiar with how much I believe that ideas have the power to change your life. How much philosophy, definitions, frameworks, clear thinking can help you go ahead. Well, it's no different with love. Hello and welcome to Valiant Growth, the podcast that empowers you to earn self-esteem, build amazing relationships, and achieve freedom through radical personal development. My name is Philip Frey, and today we will be talking about redefining love, achieving clarity in thinking about it, and thus significantly improving our relationship choices. This is the second part of the series, The Art of Stress-Free Relationships, which began with episode 36 and which can be found under valiantgrowth.com/episode 36. So if you listen to the previous episode, you will find that what I'm going to talk about today links up very much to that. So just as prudence and thinking really helps you clarify and improve friendships/alliances, and you will know what those are if you listen to the previous episode, well, the same can be said about love. And what I'm going to say here will be very familiar to both FDR listeners, Free Domain Radio listeners, and also objectivists. So let me give you the best definitions that I have of love. This first one is from Stefan Molyneux, in which he says, love is our involuntary, or you can say automatic, reaction to virtue, if we are virtuous. And for a keen observer, you can see how that actually comes from Ayn Rand, her definition being, it is our response to our highest values. And I think both definitions have their own little hidden gem inside of it, so I like to combine it and say that it is our involuntary response to our highest values. So you might say, okay, that sounds legit, but what's the point? What's the big piece of wisdom here? Well, it lies in the detail, and it lies in its opposition to the mainstream definition of love. You may or may not have noticed it already, but these definitions are radically different, and I would say radically opposed to common conceptions of love, which are never really defined, but they kind of float in the air as fuzzy ideas themselves. So let's look into this. The number one thing that these definitions bring to the table is that they say that love has a reason. Love is a consequence. It's not some kind of mystical thing. It's not something inexplicable. It's not a form of madness, but it can be linked to something. And that something is the connection between the subject of the love and the highest values of the person who loves. That is already very, very significant. It says, in defiance of the mainstream, that love can be understood and it can be influenced, and shall I even say controlled to some extent, because we know the variables. Now, the other thing that's really revolutionary in this, and this is what Molyneux added to the mix, or at least he put it explicitly, is that it is involuntary, it is automatic, it is a reaction with a cause. So what that means is that love is not something that can be asked for or demanded. And at the other side of the token, it also can't be willed. It can be offered out of coercion or out of pity or out of a desire to be good. It's kind of like a high-level form of respect. So let's take respect. You can probably recognize the ridiculousness of demanding respect from someone. And I'm not talking about refraining from being disrespectful and unempathetic, but I'm actually referring to soliciting the positive regard of someone. I hope you can feel how absurd that is. Respect can only be had as a reaction, and usually the people soliciting respect are the ones who can't earn respect properly, and they can never get respect. They can perhaps get pretended respect, but respect itself is a reaction. And the same goes for love. This definition says that you can't will yourself to love someone because the reaction itself is not within your control, and that people demanding to be loved are perpetuating a kind of relationship fraud where they expect emotions without providing the values to react to. And they're also setting out for something that is impossible. So I first heard this through FDR, and after I started going around people and telling them that they're actually not in love because they couldn't list the virtues of the other person. That didn't really work. Let's just leave it at that. Or I could say that it failed spectacularly to get my message across. And I no longer do that, and I no longer believe that it is particularly true. I think that if one loves a person who is apparently devoid of any virtues, of any good characteristics that have a moral nature, which is how I define virtues, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not in love, in fact, but it means that their highest values, as in the Randian definition, are skewed in a wrong direction. And they may not even be aware of it, but their romantic interest reveals that something is off with their highest values, something is off with their philosophy, something is off with their worldview, something is off with what they believe to be human nature, the role of people in relationships. They've had possibly destructive familial patterns that they're reenacting. So, in short, choosing people as romantic partners that are not virtuous, that are not high-quality people overall, is simply an indication of something being off, something being misaligned. And as such, quote-unquote inappropriate love is a great trailhead, a great clue, a great point from which one can go into self-exploration. So if you have made choices in the past that seem nonsensical to you right now, or they were a major disappointment, or you've made one and are in a relationship right now, or you have friends that have done it, it doesn't mean that you're fundamentally wrong or you're fundamentally broken or that you're not a high quality person. I believe what it means is that you must look into your values. You must take these events and these people as the opening of a path, like a sign, and the sign says, there is something that I have to explore here. There's something that I have to uncover here. There's something about how I see the world and probably something about my childhood history that I need to look into and that I need to explore, because if love is our involuntary reaction to our highest values, well, the only piece of that we have a control of is our highest values, but we only have a control of our highest values if we do self-knowledge, introspective kind of work, thinking, journaling, therapy, and we uncover what we really believe to be love, what we really believe to be a good partner, what we really believe that a human being has the potential to be. And I've seen it in my own choices, and I've seen it in the choices of others, that even when you redefine love and you clarify your virtues rationally, that's not an automatic guarantee that now your love detector and the things that you respond to are realigned. We carry a long history in our minds and in our bodies. We carry years and years and years where our only example of love was whatever was happening around us as children, as teenagers, and we absorb that and it becomes a part of us, and it can be changed. But to do that, we must really be introspective and we must really be respectful with ourselves. That's another important point. You must go in, you must explore what the roots of your views are. First of all, what your views are, and that message is in your choice of romantic partners. Do you see any kind of pattern that can give you a clue of what kind of people you chose? And then you connect that pattern to what kind of people were around you when you were a child and how relationships functioned, and that will unlock your hidden highest values. Not the things that you arrive to rationally through philosophy, but the things that are really a part of you. And once that is out in the open, that is when you can challenge it. And you can say, yes, it made sense for me to believe these things when I was a child. I'm not broken or wrong for that. I was trying to adapt to an environment that carried the wrong values, and I had to fit in or I wouldn't survive. So it's not surprising that I did that. But now that I'm an adult and I have choice and I have power, I can look back and I can see what patterns don't work anymore and what kind of people I have the potential to form a romantic relationship with now that I'm out of that environment. It is very difficult to exceed the quality of our parents in our romantic choices. It is also difficult to have a relationship that is significantly better, but it's not impossible. And I've seen many people go from severely dysfunctional childhood relationships being modeled to them to highly functional romantic relationships in their adulthood. But to get there, one must observe with gentleness their history and draw the conclusions from it. And that's one part, and I was assuming here all along that you have defined your virtues rationally, but if you haven't, that's also a step. That's perhaps the first step to take, because then you can see the contradiction, the conflict between the two set of values. So this is what I would do. If you want to find love, I believe it's not about the pickup lines or your posture and what you say and what you wear and things like that. Those things matter, but you must begin with your definition of love and your definition of what is virtue, what is your highest value, of what are your highest values. So this is what I did, and this is what I recommend to people. I say, codify your values, codify the qualities, the traits that you value the most, that inspire you the most, that inspire passion in you the most. I have a list of these, and you probably heard me mention this before. And in this list, the ones that really fire me up and the ones that I can really admire and that I can really be in love with are courage, morality, and purposefulness. And there's a list of other stuff, but these three are virtues that I admire greatly. And when I see it, it elicits love in me automatically. And it can be romantic or not romantic love, but it elicits a huge degree of admiration that I would go as far as calling love in me. But it took defining and it took understanding to get to that point, because I was surrounded by cowardly people as a child. I was surrounded with amoral people. I was surrounded by purposeless people. So I had to learn that these traits actually exist and develop an admiration as one develops a taste for very good food or very good music. I had to grow it. And this happened through definition and through understanding and through exploration. And once you codify your values, analyze your past or present romantic choices. Well, actually begin with yourself and say, okay, so these are the things that I admire. Am I this person? And also then look at your romantic choices. And it's difficult. It's difficult because we want to make past failures easier. We want to hide them from others and ourselves. We want to sugarcoat them. I've rarely met people, I have, but it's pretty rare when they say, yeah, I look at my past relationships and they're a disaster. They just didn't work and they were unpleasant overall. And perhaps that is wise because that's a level of vulnerability you don't want to take up with too many people. But you can have this inside yourself and you can strip away the nostalgia and try to look as objectively as you can. Did my choices meet these virtues? Did they have them? Did they not have them? What kind of actions can I bring up to support my conclusions? What kind of proof and evidence do I have that they either had it or didn't have it? And try to form a picture that is clear as possible. And next, look at familial patterns. So when you were a child, especially in your early childhood, what kind of romantic relationship was the first one that you saw in your life? How did it work? What were the roles of people in it? How did the interaction go? What kind of virtues did they possess? Which is probably your parents, but could be someone else. What kind of gender did what? These are all interesting questions, and try to see if you're recreating that or not. And it's entirely possible, though rare, that you will say, yeah, you know what? My parents have and had a great relationship and I want to reproduce that. And if you want to do that, then codify the values that you observed in their relationship. But if you don't want to reproduce it, you must raise your awareness of what was wrong and avoid the temptation of recreating it. Avoid the temptation of repeating the dysfunction of your early childhood. And as I often say, this is a pretty sensitive and pretty vulnerable exploration, so you might consider talking to this with a therapist. As I've said previously, and as some of my guests have said it, you don't have to be crazy or mentally disturbed to talk to a therapist. Their role is to coach you on support skills and also to be an impartial, enlightened witness to your history. So this can be a very good entry point into therapy or just a thing to run through the system. And then you can even leave therapy. But you could go to a therapist and say, I had relationships that I'm not satisfied with. I no longer want to recreate them. Can you help me explore what has happened? Because it might very well be that the people around you are either dishonest and have their own agendas to protect, or simply that they're not advanced enough to be able to discover these patterns that are dysfunctional. But a therapist, this is why you pay them, a good therapist will have this capacity, will have the knowledge, will be honest, and this will be his or her mission. So you can pay them a little bit and invest a few hours, and it will help you really explore it. And their job is not even necessarily to give you the knowledge, but to be there, and when you discover it, to validate it, that you're not insane. Because I believe that people know the truth. People know the truth of what has happened to them, but everybody else denies it. So we repress it. We say, no, I gotta be crazy because nobody agrees with what I felt and what I experienced and what I saw. But when you go to a therapist, they have no agenda, hopefully. And thus they can be there and they can say, oh yeah, this relationship that you see that didn't function, you're right. And you're not supposed to forgive. It's not your job. You're not supposed to bury it, but to bring it to the light, and you're doing it and you're doing a good job. That's what a therapist would do. So yeah, consider that, or simply consider doing it on your own, whichever works for you. And also, as a fun fact, after having listened to this episode, if you're exposed to music at all, I wanted to say pop music, but it's probably most music. If you're exposed to music at all, I will have spoiled 99% of romantic songs as you listen to this podcast, and I would say I'm sorry about that, but I'm really not. I think it's actually kind of fun. Now that you know this and you have this definition of love, listen to romantic songs and how love is defined in them and what are the implicit assumptions in them. I think you're gonna be equally enjoying yourself and being horrified at the same time, but it's going to go more towards enjoyment as time goes on. And if you have good songs that really really prove a point, come to valiantgrowth.com/community and share them with us. I'd love to have a list of dysfunctional romantic songs just for fun. It was one of my ideas that I should review them, and maybe I will do it in the future. The title would be Psychopop. Well, all sorts of fun things to look forward to in the future. But I don't want to trivialize this episode by ending on this note. I will say that this is the key idea in having stress-free romantic relationships. This is the foundation. It's not going to take you all the way, but if you don't clarify this, you're very unlikely to succeed. And if you do, you're very likely to succeed. So I hope you're as excited as I am about this. And I can tell you, these ideas have made my relationships really stress-free and enjoyable. And I think it will help you get there as well. Thank you for listening to Valiant Growth, and I dare you to flourish today. So, dear listener, did you enjoy this episode? If you did, I ask you to help me spread it. This is our deal. I give you the content for free, and if you like it, you give it a share. How do you do that? Just go to valiantgrowth.com, find the episode, and push one of the share buttons that are prominently displayed in the post. Thank you. I also invite you to join the discussion at valiantgrowth.com/community.